And welcome back to The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Myers. We're glad you're here with us today. We're going to meet a very interesting guest on this week's show.
Back to our roots, the roots of The Verdict.
That's right.
Back in the first year or so, all we did were legal type shows, and we've, of course, branched out since then. But we've got today the Chief Justice of the Oklahoma Supreme Court, the person that's in charge of the court that renders the most important verdicts to the citizens of Oklahoma. And we're going to be talking to the Chief Justice about how the court works and what to expect.
And we will meet Judge Winchester when we get back. You're watching The Verdict. Stay with us.
Every day America uses clean-burning natural gas instead of coal or oil is a day of victory for our environment. That's why Chesapeake chose to explore for natural gas exclusively, and we've never looked back. Because natural gas burns twice as clean as oil or coal, and reducing carbon emissions to combat potential global warming is every bit as urgent as cutting our dependence on energy imports. As America's #1 driller of new gas wells, Chesapeake is moving fast to find untapped reserves of natural gas here at home. It's the right fuel for America's economy and the fuel for a clean air future. We just happen to be early to see it so clearly. Chesapeake, natural gas wins the day.
There's a whole new world online, but it's not always safe for kids. What if someone you meet online sends a message that makes you feel uncomfortable? Tell a parent or teacher right now. It's the safe way for kids, right, gang?
Right. Be safe online.
Thanks to Lauren Nelson and Cox, we're working to keep Oklahoma kids safer online. For your free guide, log on now. And if you feel your child has been placed in danger by someone online, notify law enforcement today.
The Cox Channel, following your favorite teams all season long.
Welcome back to The Verdict. Kent's going to introduce today's guest.
Today we're really honored to have the Chief Justice of the Oklahoma Supreme Court, Justice James Winchester, joining us for the first time. I hope not the last time. Justice Winchester is a native of Clinton, Oklahoma, did his undergraduate work at the University of Oklahoma, did his law work at Oklahoma City University. He practiced law for a while in western Oklahoma, then became a judge on the trial bench out there and was on the trial bench for a number of years. In 2000, he was named by Governor Frank Keating to the Oklahoma Supreme Court and recently was elected Chief Justice of the Oklahoma Supreme Court, and we thought it'd be interesting to have him here today to tell us about what's going on. Justice Winchester, welcome.
Thank you, Ken. Thanks, Mick.
Well, congratulations on being named Chief Justice. That's got to feel pretty good.
I like the opportunity. It's one of those things, it's a way to pay back those 15 years on the trial court and all those lawyers that helped you along the way.
Or pay them back?
Yeah, pay them back one way or the other. And then also an opportunity to kind of lead from the trial court, which is where I came from. 15 years worth of experience there and to give back to that group of folks.
I've served for 6 years on the Judicial Nominating Commission, so I'm somewhat familiar with the process of moving up to the Supreme Court by appointment. I know that one thing we always looked for and hoped for and didn't always have was applicants that had trial experience. How has your trial experience of 15 years benefited you to serve as a justice of the Supreme Court?
You know, I hope in two ways. There's the decision-making process that you have as a judge by being able to make some difficult decisions. And fortunately, I was in a position, there's some big oil and gas cases that came out of the 80s that challenge you. And just the day-to-day interrelationship with lawyers and moving cases. The big challenge for all judges is to not let those dockets back up and delay criminal cases or domestic cases. So hopefully I bring that practical experience. I've also certainly been down there doing cases and find yourself in the case getting astray, if you will, and can better understand how that happens to lawyers and to judges. The other thing I think that's valuable after 15 years is, you know, on a day-to-day basis, whether it's Oklahoma County, Grady County, or the Panhandle, what those judges and those lawyers are going through. So hopefully I bring that kind of experience.
Is the caseload ever increasing?
You know, I think we've really hit a time where it's a little more stabilized. What we're seeing, and we will begin in May to do a business type analysis of our judicial resources, our judges, and where that caseload has moved. As you know, with redistricting, which signifies more people moving closer to the metro areas, they also have more lawsuits that have moved from a rural area into that area. We're going to analyze that to make sure we've got a good proportion on that. As far as Supreme Court, it's kind of leveled off. We're seeing more cases get settled before they come up with alternative dispute resolution, and probably the cost of litigation is driving a large part of that.
Well, are they getting more intricate? Are cases getting more complicated?
You know, I think that's a good point, Mick. We still have the routine case that comes up. We had a docket this morning with about 15 to 17 cases that we looked at. They wanted us to look at cert. They range from the usual domestic cases. Small claims happen to be on there. We're seeing more arbitration cases, which is interesting. And one of the justices today, Justice Taylor, made the observation, which I think is true, that business is building in, both insurance and commercial folks are building into their contracts those arbitration clauses. So I think that is an alternative to the courtroom. You're right, that's where those are headed.
Mm-hmm. The legislature a number of years ago, under the auspices or sponsorship, I should say, of Lance Cargill, enacted some legislation for business courts, a pilot program, I think, in the two larger counties of the state. And there's been some recent activity in that regard. Do you see that coming to play in Oklahoma anytime soon?
You know, I'd need to meet with Speaker Cargill. He has another bill this session that more clearly lays out those areas he thinks needs attention, or a docket, if you will, as opposed to someone that does just those kind of cases. Mm-hmm. I'd want to sit down and visit with him and see where he felt there were problems, get with probably those judges in Oklahoma City and Tulsa and find out how they're handling those cases and if they're moving. We really like to see judges at that district level to be multifaceted, not just be able to handle one type case. For two reasons. One, it keeps the judge fresh, and two, they ought to know the law in those other areas. It also, from an administrative standpoint, if I get where, I only do business cases, or I only do this kind of case, then you can't put pressure on other cases to get those settled. So I'd be interested to see what he had in mind.
You've had about 7 years on the court now, or 6.5 years on the court now. How do your duties as Chief Justice differ from the duties you had as Justice Winchester?
Well, as a justice, I could kind of come and go at the time I wanted. Now I've got those other 8 folks that are watching to see when I'm here. And on Friday afternoon, it's my car that tends to be there most of the time. With 9 people on the Supreme Court, and all with fairly strong personalities and very independent, we have to have one at least at a time that's kind of in charge to run those conferences on Monday, run them on Thursday. Day-to-day activities, so that you have someone in charge. But the main thing is it gives you an opportunity, back to the first question, to sit there, reflect on what's going on in the district courts, whether it's Oklahoma County or a more rural county, say in the Panhandle, and say, what is it over this next 2 years that I can do to move that along for those judges and those lawyers and ultimately the citizens. So that's really the opportunity I see for 2 years, and you have to keep that energy up to get that done.
How often do you monitor what goes on in other states' Supreme Courts? How much correspondence do you have with other Supreme Courts in other states?
We don't have a lot of correspondence with others. We, just as those states are kind of the final opinion, especially in civil cases. As you know, Oklahoma and Texas are the only 2 that don't do criminal. so we're not subject to a lot of the federal constitution that the criminal cases get. So we don't have a lot there. I'm hopeful. We just voted in conference to rejoin the National Center for State Courts, national organization, and be able to have that exchange. There's a Chief Justice's Conference, especially with our technology that we're going to try to expand again. We want to find out what's going on in other states so that we can make good decisions business-wise for this state and how we spend the taxpayers' money.
Once a case finally makes its way and is accepted for decision by the Oklahoma Supreme Court, take us just briefly through the steps that the case goes through from just cert being granted to decision.
I'm going to back up just a little because it's kind of a challenge to get cert granted. Every Monday, we get a group of cases, usually 15 cases that have had a trial, they've been to the Court of Appeals and have a decision, and they still think for one reason or another someone missed the law along the way and want us to look at it. Everyone gets a petition in error from the plaintiff, why they said there was a problem, the defendant, or whoever's appealing. And then we have referees that have looked over those cases in a little more detail and give us an independent opinion. We can accept it or reject it. Every justice on Monday afternoons gets their cases for the next Monday. We read those, and then we meet in conferences, we did this morning, and discuss those very briefly usually. Everyone knows kind of where that area of problem may be. We vote to accept or reject it. If there are 5 or more votes, then it is assigned randomly to one of those 5 or more to write an opinion. No one picks cases. You don't get to become an expert in comp or in oil and gas or whatever else. We're all supposed to be experts. So it gets assigned to that justice. They have 9 months to get an opinion back. Most get it back sooner than that. They take that, we'll sit down usually with their staff and discuss the problem. All the 9 that I've ever heard, even though we grant, so we're going to look at this and give it a fresh look and see what the problem is. They sit down and do that.
Our guest is Chief Justice James Winchester, and we'll return on the verdict right after this.
The Journal-Record is pleased to be a sponsor of the verdict. The Journal-Record, since 1903, the best source of Oklahoma business news and legal information.
Shining is taking responsibility. At Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Oklahoma, we know managing your health care can be overwhelming, and it's our job to help you meet the challenge. By guiding, supporting, and showing the way, we encourage you to gain control. Because we believe the best tool we can give you is the confidence to take charge. Blue Cross Blue Shield of Oklahoma, shining through.
Okiwani is an Indian name for a place where children play. When we obtained the camp, we found a lot of oil debris left in the woods. We saw a commercial about how the oil and natural gas industry cleans up old oil well sites. We called the OERB, and they agreed to remove tons of concrete and steel. It didn't cost us a thing. Thousands of children have left their footprints on this land. Thanks to the oil and gas industry, they will for a long time to come.
Wilsey, Meyer, Eatman, Tate. We're accountants. We do taxes, business valuations, estate planning, and consulting. And we're right here in Oklahoma, working with the owners of small and medium-sized businesses. Steve Wilsey and Stuart Meyer have the resources and the experience. Wilsey, Meyer, Eatman, Tate in Oklahoma City and Tulsa.
Hi, this is James Garner.
Hi, this is Reba McEntire.
Hi, this is Johnny Bench.
Hi, I'm Barry Switzer.
Hey, everybody, this is Vince Gill.
Welcome to my home state of Oklahoma,
where we'll be celebrating 100 years of statehood
in 2007.
Our strength is our people, and the 2,100 Oklahomans from the Cox Communications family are proud to be part of Oklahoma's story. Cox and Oklahoma, true partners.
Happy birthday, Oklahoma.
Not sure where you're headed? NATS can help you find your way. It's the National Athletic Testing System. We call it NATS. You'll call it your launching pad to success. NATS will give you a standardized evaluation that will help you measure your performance and give that information to college coaches so they can accurately evaluate your potential. NATS also helps with academic support. Join with the Oklahoma High School Football Coaches Association and head for success at www.nats.us.
One of the more interesting aspects to the state legislature this session has been the interaction between the governor's office and the Senate and the House involving the budget. Does the Supreme Court get involved in the budget process, and how and when would you all check in?
The only budget that we get involved in is ours is a third branch. Usually a little less with the governor, although he's aware of it because we submit that to them to review, but through the legislature. We actually sit down with both House and Senate Speaker, Pro Tem, the co-Pro Tems, and discuss what our budget and what our needs are.
And you have to justify it just like every other branch?
They do, and they have questions. Many are lawyers or they have constituents that want to know how we're spending money and how we can better do that. So, right, we follow the same way there. They'll treat us a little bit differently being a branch, but for the most part, we're treated the same way and ask us to be accountable.
We know that the court deals with individual cases as they come up and are finally accepted and decided by the Supreme Court. How does that take time from you and your court members versus the judicial administration of the state, like overcrowding in the jails and the like?
You know, what we, of course, judges make independent decisions whether they're on the Supreme Court or the trial court. But administratively, what we try to do from the Supreme Court, as with Oklahoma County recently, there's a group of judges there, I'm real excited about this program, where they tend to do civil and criminal. There are 5 of them who decided to take a team approach to all their cases and cover for each other so that possibly they can move those criminal cases faster and the civil cases. They're going to keep the records to see how quickly they move. So I'm hopeful we can take their success, Judge Dan Owens, we can take their success and then expand that in Oklahoma and Tulsa County and the others. That's where we really need to make an impact from administration. And so that's in the works.
What's new in technology or procedures out at the court that perhaps the public doesn't know about how what's available as a matter of public record, how easy is it to get it, and that sort of thing?
Yeah, we're real happy with our website. It's I came on about 8 years ago, and we ran into some problems. I think we've worked those out. We're only in about, I think it's 8 counties, maybe up to 13, and then we have another system for the balance of the state. We'd like to combine those so that it works better. But I think within those 8 to 13 counties, access is pretty good and opportunities. We're going to use that computer system and that software to tell us how we're disposing of cases. But it needs to be expanded. That's part of our reason for getting back with the National Center is we want to know what's going on in other states.
Let me follow up with that just a minute. But that system you have right now for the 8 to 13 counties, if an individual citizen wants to know what's going on in a particular case that's up at the Supreme Court, they can get on the website and get to see the docket sheet and see what's happening, I guess.
Right. You can, if you can, of course, the docket sheet will show legalese. That may be a little tough to interpret, but generally they can find out, you know, what's going on and what we have. They want to know. We don't do oral argument very often, but if they call the chief's office, we can tell them if there's one set or when the next one may be.
Let me switch subjects just a little bit. What's the turnaround time for a case once it reaches the Supreme Court until there's some sort of finality?
Case is tried, and once they get their transcripts done and get to us, Court of Appeals usually gets them first. They have been getting those out in 9 months or less. If we take it, it's usually 9 months or less. So it'll be about 18 months. But in all honesty, somebody appeals, they're going to have a decision on appeal within a year, at least the first one.
And how long does it take to write a decision?
Yeah, it kind of depends on how complex it is, but different people.
You don't just write a paragraph and turn it in.
No, there are a couple of.
Sometimes these seem fairly lengthy.
You know, that depends on the author and who you're writing for. Some write what I like to think of is very encompassing, and it may be read at the law schools. There are others where I kind of fall that try to write that opinion somewhere 12 to 15 pages if I can, and I look at it as a tool for working lawyers and for judges, and so I approach it maybe a little bit differently, but 3 to 4 months average time.
Tell us how dissenting opinions get created and as a part of the decision. I suppose the justice that's assigned the case randomly after it's ready for assignment will give a draft of the opinion to the court as a whole, and then others, if they don't see fit to sign on to it, can dissent.
Right. You finish an opinion, you circulate it to all 9, whether they concurred or not. That's talked about in conference the next week. If you want to dissent, you just give notice. You have 3 weeks to write a dissent. It's usually very focused as to what you want. It's not another opinion focused and go on. If you feel strong enough about it, sometimes you just dissent and want to register that. But if you think it's an important area or that there's a problem with the majority opinion, then you will write and try to hone in on exactly what you see the problem.
My perception is that there's just a lot of paperwork going back and forth amongst the judges and amongst the other courts. How much oral argument is involved in cases that the Supreme Court hears?
You know, we'll do 2 to 3 times a year, which for the 100 cases about as a group that we will write, we'd like to see more of that. But part of it, if it's an individual case and just affects those 2 people, it probably doesn't merit oral argument. If it's a big case, we have some bond cases, we've had state questions, other tax questions that affect everyone, then they tend to garner more support. I think as I sit there and try to say what tends to appeal to oral argument and what doesn't, those people that maybe came from the trial court, I was used to lawyers, I found value in what lawyers had to say, either getting me on track or keeping me from getting off track. And so I tend to be, along with a number of the others, feel that's valuable. But it's pretty individual and depends on the case.
Just as a personal aside, you practiced law for a number of years, so you can identify with it. One of the most fun things a lawyer gets to do in the course of a career is argue before all 9 justices of the Oklahoma Supreme Court. I mean, it's a little scary, daunting, but it's really rewarding and exciting. And I know lawyers would, not that their cases justify it, but lawyers would like to argue more than they get a chance to do.
I also think it'd be valuable, we've talked about it, Justice Paul and I in particular have talked about, and Justice Taylor, the value to the public. To see you out there, they see the paper come through, but to see all 9 of you there at one time. We're there twice a week anyway. I think it will increase, but it takes kind of the right case.
Bodies of elected officials deal with the open meetings requirements. Do the Supreme Court justices, are they required to abide by open meeting laws?
Our discussions are exempt. In other words, when we meet on Monday to discuss the case and vote on it, and on Thursday, the actual meeting, there are only the 9 of us in there. Our votes are all recorded and they're public. So you can see how I voted on every case and every decision that comes through.
What are the principal challenges, just kind of as a final question, principal challenges that you see in the years to come for the Supreme Court?
You know, I think the principal challenge is judges are independent when they make a decision. The real challenge is from administratively is how they fit in the loop with overcrowding with jails, to make sure they move those cases and get those done, to get judges, trial court judges, to set aside their independence, make your decision independently, but how do we work together to get divorces and domestic cases heard quicker for people? How do we make sure that people who are accused of crime get tried and that resolved one way or the other, so that we move that along? That's the challenge, at least for me, at the Supreme Court.
Mm-hmm. What's the length of time a person stays as the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court? Is this something that happens for 20 years or 50 years or 1? What's the average turnover in Oklahoma?
That has stayed as Chief Justice or
yes.
as a Justice?
How long does someone typically stay?
We amended our rules, had a transition, and Justice Watts served 4 years, 1 extra 2-year term. My term is for a period of 2 years. It's my anticipation that in 2 years I will move on and support whoever they elect next.
Well, we feel like Oklahoma is well served, and congratulations on the vote, and we appreciate all your service to Oklahoma.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for your time.
You bet.
Chief Justice James Winchester, our guest. Kent and I'll have a final word when we return.
The good life comes naturally to Tulsa, where nature's beauty is matched with an eye for aesthetics. A legacy of neighborhoods graced with lawns and landscaping and handsome homes. A place that seems to have patented an ideal lifestyle. Bank First is loyal to the quality of life Tulsa assures its citizens, to the priority placed on education, culture, and growth. Loyal to builders who transform raw land into residential charm. Developers who see opportunity and add vitality to Tulsa's economy. Bank First serves both enterprise and private lives that need a loyal partner. It's how we help nurture this city's very good life. Bank First. Loyal to Oklahoma. Loyal to you.
Oh, hi. I know you guys said I'd save with Cox Digital Telephone. Well, my bill came and... Could this be right?
You may be surprised how much you save with Cox Digital Telephone. That's why over 1.5 million people have switched.
So this really is a total. Lovely. Because I think I found a good use for the savings.
With Cox, there's no waiting for the other shoe to drop. The only surprise is there's no surprise at all.
Cox Channel, following your favorite teams all season long.
Welcome back to The Verdict, wrapping up the show with Chief Justice James Winchester. Kent?
Well, it's a very open administration out there under Chief Justice Winchester, and a very high profile position, very responsible position. And we are well served in Oklahoma to have a Chief Justice like Justice Winchester serving, even if it's just for 2 years. But the other members of the court do an awesome service for the citizens of Oklahoma. They're the final word usually on cases that come out of Oklahoma. And they have a huge responsibility. They carry it out diligently and frankly, much more quickly today than was the case when I started practicing law 131 years ago. It's just a little faster now. I really didn't start 131 years ago.
But that's right. Well, we're certainly glad that you joined us today on The Verdict, and I hope you appreciated the show with Chief Justice James Winchester. We've got a show coming up next week. You want to tell them about that?
Yes, we're going to have President Tom McDaniel of Oklahoma City University. He's going to talk to us about what's going on out at OCU. A lot of interesting, fun things going on. And there's just always something going on at 23rd and Penn.
We'll be right back next week with another show, and we'll see you then.
The preceding program was produced by the Production Services Group at Cox Communications, exclusively for the Cox Channel.